Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm sat down to film a video that I feel like I get questions about all of the time. Whenever I put out a Q&A or just generally get questions, it's always about renovation regrets. So that is what we're going to talk about. I've grabbed myself a tea, a mint tea. If you're a grown-up, grab yourself an actual tea or coffee. And I want to go through things that I would change. Hopefully you guys can learn from some of our mistakes, things that maybe we do differently, or things just to learn, like things that if I'd have known this 2 years ago, my life may have been a little bit easier. I've got a long list, so I'm going to hopefully get through them semi-snappily. I think I'll start with one of the recent jobs that we did, that is in this top floor. We took out every single floorboard, so we wanted to keep the original Victorian floorboards. Don't get me wrong, the end result, absolutely amazing. We got exactly what we wanted. We wanted them to feel and look new. We didn't want any gaps. I wanted to be able to clean them and for those to be like silky smooth. We had people walking in barefoot just for them to feel amazing. They do. Was it worth it? No. Would we do it again? No. And the reason why is because we think we could achieve the same thing without anywhere near as much work. So if you don't remember, if you're new here, we pulled up every single floorboard on the top floor of a like 2-story house. Took them down through the outside, through the windows. We had to have, at one point we had my brother helping lift them down, but Ollie had to like run down the stairs whilst I held it on a level to be able to get it down. It was a nightmare. It's probably the only job that we've started, and about halfway through I've just thought, what the hell have we done? I would have stopped it halfway through if we could have, but we would have only had half a floor, so it just wouldn't have worked. And then we took them outside to the end of the garden to plane them, brought them back, lifted them all the way up through the house again to put them back. We think we could have achieved the same thing, and what we plan to do with the rest of the house is still take up every board, plane the sides so that they're lovely and flat and smooth that way, and then just sand the tops. Save yourself so much time and hassle. Even just thinking about it now, I'm like, why? Why did we make our lives so difficult? Number 2 is one that I don't think I ever told you guys about, and that is in our new bathroom. So my original plan for it, and I think the dreadful thing here was Pinterest. I'd been on Pinterest, and because we have this sloping ceiling in our bathroom, I was wondering how we could make that work with a shower. And my original idea is that I wanted to tile the whole thing, so the whole enclosure and the sloping ceiling too. When it actually got to it, after I'd ordered the tiles, we got in 4 tilers, and every one of them was absolutely adamantly no. They will not tile a sloping ceiling or like a slope. And I was like, but Pinterest does it, so surely that is achievable. But for some reason, now I did have like semi-heavy natural marble tiles, which didn't help, but I did say to them all, well, if I got a like thinner, lighter tile, would you then do it? No. So I wish that maybe I'd stuck to my guns a little bit more with that one and I'd pushed it. I did research at the time and I found adhesive that was supposedly like harder for a sloping ceiling, but I didn't have the confidence after 4 tilers. Quite professional tilers had told me no. In hindsight, I probably didn't need it tiled, and that's what most of them were saying, because our shower comes up quite high anyway, so the slope is above, so you're not splashing it with water. But it's more design-wise, I think I would have liked to have seen it tiled. Whether we ever would have or not, I don't know, but definitely stick to your guns, and if you see pictures of things, I think it's worth trying to push it. Now this one takes us right back to the beginning. When we first purchased the house, I really wanted to keep every single detail, every single character, all the charm that it had, including the woodwork. So when we moved in, we stripped every single bit of woodwork. You do have to do it, and it is worth doing. In the long run, we would have needed it done if we were going to keep all the woodwork. We did all the dado rails, all the skirting boards. In hindsight, I wish that we hadn't. I wish that for now we had painted over it, and when the time came when, so we took it off mostly because of the lead paint. And if you chip lead paint, it's a bit like asbestos, and all the particles go up into the air. It can be quite dangerous, especially for children. So it's a job that we really wanted to get done. but it wasn't worth keeping all of the original woodwork, unfortunately, especially the things like the dado rails, because when you're trying to strip years and years and years of paint off of them, they get damaged kind of in the process a little bit. So they don't look that great now anyway. We're probably going to change them in the future, and it took, if not weeks, months to get all of that paintwork off of the old wood. Really, now that we look at it, and now that we're a bit further on with the house, the stuff that is around right now is just as bit good, like new skirting board, new dado rail. Houses need updating. It's lovely to keep as much as you can, but at the end of the day, this one's over 100 years old. Some of it just needs to be changed. Laura, past Laura, just change it, take it off, don't waste your time. Now this is one that I don't want to sound ungrateful for, and I was so grateful for some of this. But when you first move in, especially if you're living in a renovation, don't let people come around and drop you things. Family, friends, dropping you curtains and furniture and bits that don't go in your house and most likely aren't going to go into your house either. We had accumulated so many things that, to be honest, at the time I was grateful for, but then just became a huge burden because they were just collecting dust, and we had things like quite nice curtains that had been in a family's cottage before, so were quite clearly not going to fit our huge Victorian windows, which were just collecting dust, and they could have been sold probably for some good money, but we had them just stacked in a room, not been used. Having said that, we did have items that I was so grateful for. We had curtains in our bedroom, and we had curtains in the living room for my parents that we just couldn't have done without. But actually, it's worth just saying no. Part of living in a renovation and saving money, you just can't let things build up. And letting rooms get accumulated with items is one of the hardest things, because you spend the majority of your time in a renovation, which I've been having you cleaning up, tidying up, shuffling things, moving things from room to room. The more you have, the harder it gets. And that one actually ties in quite nicely with another one, which is having better storage earlier on. Probably Ollie and I were a little bit naive. We moved everything in cardboard boxes. It's just not practical at all. Depending on how long you are expecting to renovate, and if you are living in the renovation, you're going to need something much more practical. We moved over to the really useful boxes. They're clear, so straight away, at just like a little glance, you can be like, that's where our bedding is. You can see it visually, it makes it so much easier. They all stack nicely on top of each other. Cardboard boxes just deteriorate over time, especially if you're opening and closing them. Can't see where anything is. And you just need to make your life as easy as possible whilst you're doing all of the physical work. It's well worth being organised before you move. So my top tip would be to really check all of your boxes before you move. Make sure you actually need everything that you're moving with, because again, likelihood is you could probably declutter quite a lot, get rid of as much as you can, keep as much as you can in boxes, whilst also trying to live but in a really orderly way. Now next up is a real sore point for Ollie and I, one that we don't talk about but unfortunately often gets brought up every time somebody comes to our front door, and that is our front door. So all of the doors in our house, all of the inside ones and our front door, we got dipped. If you don't know what that is, it's basically put in a huge vat of paint stripper and all of the paint is magically taken off of it. The experience was really good for us. It was great for all of our inside doors, but for some reason, our outside door, again, we took so much time over it. We filled it all, we put new trim on it, we got bespoke new trim it made, and it has warped and shrunk, I think, with the wet weather and then the warm weather. So going from summer to winter, it changes because it's a natural door, and it's a bit of a nightmare because I think the trim that we got is a different wood to the wood of the door, so that is shrinking and warping at a different time of the door, and it cracks constantly. I actually tried to fix it up again last Christmas, so that when I took all the lovely like wreath Christmas pictures and had Christmas, you wouldn't be able to see it, but it is in such a poor state again. I actually don't know the answer to this one. If you have any, please let me know. Another issue that we have is that our entranceway that we have isn't actually level, so we tried to make the door as tight as possible, but we think not only the door is warping and expanding and changing, but the rim is too, and the rim looks pretty bad. So the door kind of like always sticks on the floor. It's a pain. We have to like jar it to get it open. I really don't want to get rid of the original door, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure of a way past it right now. Any tips? Please let me know, but I don't think we should have stripped it. Basically, in hindsight, I wish that we had maybe just painted over the door temporarily as it was, and then in time hand stripped it, because probably the fact of it being put in basically a liquid was also changing it and making it a different size. Yeah, the door continues and will always continue. Now you know about it, so I won't feel so terrible when you guys next see it. So this next one is one that I've heard quite often. So many people tell you I was aware of at the time that I was doing it and didn't. So here's another reminder for you. Now the reason we didn't is money, and I think that's quite often why people make mistakes or would do things differently. But sockets, put so many more sockets in than you think. We actually put loads of sockets in and then got the quote from our electrician and took them out. Oh, why? It's so difficult because obviously you're trying to stay on a budget, and at the time we were like, it's not necessary because you don't really need an abundance of sockets. It's like a little bit of a luxury. But now that we don't have them, I wish that we did, and you just can't go back and change it. The other thing is something that I really specifically wanted with the sockets, and that was to hide all of them. So we've got them hidden behind our desk, we've got them hidden behind our console table, but then that just means that you have to move things to get to one. And we were going to have some in our hallway, in the wardrobe, so that we could plug in the Hoover and things, but we don't yet have those out there. So now if you want to plug in a Hoover, you have to like move a bit of furniture, or I'm constantly moving things to plug something in. I'm not quite sure the best place, maybe you guys can leave this in the comment, but I was thinking maybe behind a door would be a really good place just to put a socket, have it there, so that often we have things like Ollie wants to steam a shirt, you just want to plug something in quickly, pop it on, or Hoover, that kind of thing. You just need a socket really available and there and in sight. So that's one of my tips. I try to hide all of ours, but now actually I'd probably have at least one that you can get to really, really easily. Now this is a totally selfish thing. I'm going to be honest, it's just about me. But I really regret, especially in the winter, taking out the bath. Now, there's a reason that we did it that I haven't told you guys about, and that is, as so many of you may know, we lodge out a room on our bottom floor with the bathroom, and it went so well at the time, so well, that we thought, should we do another room? So actually the green room and that bathroom was always there with the idea that we might let that one out to another lodger. But as time's gone by, cutting a long story short, we've decided that that isn't something that we want to do. So we took out the bath because we thought, like, practically with a lodger, it's much easier to have a shower. Also with guests, because it was going to be a bit of a guest room, it's easier to have a shower. But now we have no bath in the house, and I really miss it. I knew that I'd miss it, but I don't think I'd realise how long it might be until we might have another bath. And I kind of want to put one back in. I don't think we will, because it's not worth it for us, because that still is a temporary bathroom. But oh, to have a bath, especially in the cold months, because the house is cold and I get pretty cold, and the only way to warm me up is to really heat me up. So yeah, I'd have rethought that and kept a bath in the house. Now this is one that everybody tells you to do the opposite with. So many people said, don't go in all guns blazing, don't just like tear everything out, take your time. I wish we hadn't. You never have as much energy as when you first move into the house. That excitement is just like adrenaline, and it is amazing for getting things done. So I wish that we had actually got more skips in at the beginning and got rid of more stuff. And also with that point, usually if you're lucky enough at the beginning, loads of friends and family are really excited to come over and help. Let me tell you, 2.5 years in, it's much more of a struggle. So I wish that we'd taken that time to really just strip all of the wallpaper, strip all of the carpets, get everything gone. I was quite worried because so many people had told us not to do that too much. And there are pros and cons. Obviously we have kept some carpet and we've kept some on our stairs, which hopefully is protecting them a bit more, because obviously we want to keep the original wood floor. But we still, at 2.5 years, have so much to get rid of. Like lampshades, we still had up like dirty, terrible lampshades on the ceiling, that because we had just got so engrossed in other projects, we didn't seem to have the time to finish off getting rid of everything. We moved into a renovation house that had been left in a pretty bad state, but not just that, it had a lot of objects in it. So furniture upstairs in the attic, it had loads of carpets, and we just needed probably realistically about 5 skips to get rid of everything. At the time it seemed like a huge expense that wasn't worth it, but really we're paying for it anyway, just in a much more prolonged way. And just before I get into the next scrap, I wanted to thank today's sponsor, Skillshare. If you guys don't know about them, they're the online learning community. They have thousands of classes, and I think you're gonna like this one if you're similar to me. It is a new class by Jonathan Van Ness. And if you don't know him, he was in Queer Eyes, which I just absolutely fell in love with and really love his personality. And he's got a class, The Ultimate Self-Care Playbook, Discover and Nurture Your Centered Self. And he's just got that kind of personality to him that he can, because he's partly a comedian too, he delivers it in such a wonderful way. Sometimes I find self-care a little bit too serious, and it means that I'm not so good with self-care. But he just delivers it in this really upbeat way. To be honest, if you're feeling down, just watch the class anyway, because it is just such a lovely class to watch. It really just made me feel so good inside. And he has classes about so many things. So he does one on yoga, listening to yourself, preparing your planner, why self-care, developing your routine, failing and forgiving. It's a lovely class. I would really recommend it. But they have so many classes on so many different things. If that's not your thing, they also have photography, videography, loads on interior design to get loads of different tips. So if you're really into interiors, I would highly recommend it. It's just a lovely thing to be able to do, kind of learn and discover more about yourself. I'm going to leave a link below, because they're actually offering the first 1,000 people who click that link a free 1-month subscription, which is just absolutely amazing. So you can see how you like it, watch that class, tell me if you enjoyed it, and if there are any others which you really loved, let me know the ones that you loved too. But now, on to the next regret. Now, one more quick one before I think what will be my last one. I wish that we had made small home comforts easier and prioritised them more. We were really focused on getting a room done and getting this whole project finished, that we actually didn't really think about ourselves. Looking back, we spent a whole terrible winter with no heating in the kitchen or in the dining room. So when we moved in, there was a Raven in the kitchen, and that was heating it. When we had our boiler changed, that was it. There was no heating in the kitchen, and there wasn't even anything in the dining room. And the room next to the kitchen is a hallway that leads outside. So it was freezing. And Ollie put the radiator in an evening. It was really simple, it was really easy. Why didn't we do it? I'm not really sure. But those little home comforts make such a difference. Maybe it's just us as a couple that we're too focused on the big things, but thinking about those little things, making your life easier to actually live in a renovation, cope with a renovation, it's well worth stopping to think about before getting too engrossed in the bigger things. And lastly, the only thing that I would change on this top floor, and I don't think it's something that I could have gone back and done differently, but I would change the radiator in this room. And that is because even though we measured about 1 million times, it's too tall. And that just kind of shows you, and it really is the fact of renovating. Not everything's going to be perfect. And I really wanted to put this in because it is something that I haven't mentioned, because with so many opinions online and just, it just sometimes you don't want to put these things on the internet. But we measured and measured and measured these radiators, and it's the perfect width, but it's just too high. That is because we didn't factor in the fact that we were going to be putting trim around this window. So now it kind of hits the trim, and although you wouldn't notice it, it leans forward just the tiniest bit, which It's not like enough for it to be dangerous, but it's enough for it to bug me design wise, and just the fact that it hits the trim rather than sitting just below it really nicely. It was really difficult though to get radiators in that style, the right size for the space under the window, but also the right heat output. We're going to test it during the winter, but I actually think we could have gone for a much smaller one in here because it's the top of the house. It generally stays quite warm anyway. So we're going to be moving this radiator and probably putting it somewhere else and changing it for a smaller one. It's only a really small thing, and that's the thing with renovating. Over time, there's probably things that you would have done differently. For example, we think for the rest of the house, to the back, we have old, terrible double glazing. And we were going to change the whole property for lovely wooden sash windows, but we think now that we'll probably just do it out the front, because what's the difference having it out the back? The old windows aren't there anyway, and practically it's probably a little bit easier at the back of the property to keep them the PVC. So, I mean, you live and you learn, but I guess with every project, with every different house that you do, you probably do things slightly differently, but you can't predict those things sometimes, and often a lot of them are to do with money and being able to afford. Ollie and I were saying yesterday how much things in a way have changed, because now we've had 2.5 years to pay for things and settle into the house a little bit, but when we moved in we genuinely did not have a penny, and hiring a skip was really overwhelming. We used to get a van and put things in a van and to make it cheaper, and it made our lives so much harder, but it's the only option that we had at the time. So although it would be lovely to go back and be like, yeah, just get somebody to sweep in and do it all, and I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that, practically you just can't. You've got to do the best that you're doing. If you're renovating, you're doing the best, keep going at it. Sometimes it's a slog, but it's going to be so worth it, and even if you've made mistakes, probably you'll know, but nobody else around you will know. We've been looking back at photos, and it's so nice to see how far you come. So just remember how far you've come, don't worry about time, you'll get it done at some point, and it's not the end of the world if you don't. But I hope that maybe you learned something, or you just enjoyed seeing and knowing some of the mistakes we made, or things that we would do differently in the future. I'm sure in a few years' time, or when we finish different aspects of this house, I will be able to do more videos like this with a lot more mistakes. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this video. I hope you're all well, and I will see you all next week. Bye guys!